so well designed and expertly wielded that it could cut entirely through a human body. And I know if you're a devotee of other sword systems and other styles, you're going to go, what's the big deal? Anybody with a good sword from any warrior culture can cut all the way through a mat. Or a person, I mean. It doesn't have to be Matt, it could be James or John. Yes, but one of the really cool things about the katana is it was so well designed, it didn't just cut through one person. It could cut through multiple people. So, the record for test cutting with a Japanese sword and cutting through human bodies in one swing, the record is 7. And I'm feeling good today. Could I get 8 volunteers from the audience? Look, there are at least 8 people with their hands up. Even though I set that up where they all know that we're going to cut people in half, and they still volunteer. Now, I understand why he's volunteering. He just wants out of this relationship. Are you an only child? Yes. I get in more trouble for that. Yeah, I know. But I know your dad. He runs the gym I teach at, and if I take him out of the gym, actually, he may give me a discount on rent. Maybe, let's just do 1. She's wearing white. It'll show where the cut goes. Actually, that outfit, I've had this dream.
I just want to applaud her balance in those heels. Oh my God.
We have a friend who was trying to be silly that Jill was married to a freakishly tall person, and so she custom ordered her a pair of heels that were 7 inches high, like Gene Simmons from Kiss heels, for her to wear, and so I had her wear them to a Red Lobster once, because 7-inch heels made her 6'3", 6'4", and so I had her walk into the restaurant ahead of me, so I could watch people, and people were just going, oh my God, it's an Amazon! And they were staring at her, and then I walked in and stopped next to her, and it looked like the perfect couple. And everybody just went, oh, there's balance in the universe, and then just went back to their food. You wear higher heels than that? I remember you saying you're a gymnast, but gymnastics and high heels don't normally go in the same sentence. I would guess most women who've worn high heels have tumbled in them. Yeah, thank you for explaining that. Florida man looked confused. Okay, what's your name? Guinevere. Could be a short name I remember. Guinevere, everybody wave, say hi, Guinevere. Everybody wave, say bye, Guinevere.
Hi.
All right, so this is the part of the show you volunteered for. The end of the show. As the samurai trained, their last test before they were given their first shinken, a real sword, was tamishigiri. Tamishigiri means test cutting. It's like target practice for the samurai. And for a brief time, they practiced a subset of cutting that involved volunteers. Okay? The practice was called sujigiri. And if we have anybody here who actually speaks Japanese, I'm going to go out on a limb and say we don't. Because every anime comment, well, for one, it's a really tough language. So most people who actually do speak it, even if it's conversational level, still go, not really, because there's too much to know. But we're attracted to grass is greener on the other side, so everybody loves anime, doesn't understand what Japanese, how to speak Japanese, because it sounds cooler if you don't know what the words mean. Well, sujigiri translates as a crossing of 2 paths. It is a euphemism for peasant cutting. For 10 years in Japanese history, it was legal for the nobility in Japan, the samurai, to cut down peasants just to see if their new sword is sharp or if their blade angle is correct. And whenever this is the part of the show you volunteered for. So, do you see this stand right here? Do you see the spike? Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to climb up on the stand, and I want you to sit right there, and don't move, and I'll take care of the rest. Now, while Guinevere's getting ready, let me explain about this. You volunteered for this. Look, how many of you want to see me cut with a folded steel, differentially heat-treated, $2,500 razor-sharp sword? The customer is always right, you don't understand. So, what?
I think it's time for a stunt double here.
Yeah, a stunt double. For Guinevere, she looks like she's an extra in Star Trek. Actually, I like that episode. Who do you think you are, anyway, kid? Tom Cruise?
Don't be ridiculous, she's much taller.
Okay, it might be the heels, but she's right.
How about we have Guinevere 2.0?
Oh yeah, looks just like her. No one will be able to tell the difference.
Put the mask on, it'll be in disguise.
No, that really.
I'm pretty sure they were kind of specific about not chopping the attendees into little pieces.
She said it was okay. She said she has class on Monday. It must be reconnect. Or the biology class? Criminal justice. I'll be there too. Great. This is the man who cut me into small pieces. Do we have a... Fine. We'll send Guinevere back to her seat with her own Darwin Award. I mean, a token of our appreciation. This is my ebook. This is my novel. It's coming out in 2 months, and the audiobook will be out later this year, and Johnny Young Bosch is doing the audiobook for it, so it might be better than it's written. But it is amazing. That's for you. I'm going to send you back to your friends who are very willing to let you come up here, and she is a gymnast. Everybody give it up for Guinevere. Let me give it up for us before we were so rudely interrupted. Just to be clear, sujigiri really was a thing. It was legal in Japan for 10 years for the nobility to cut down peasants with their swords. This practice was widely unpopular. I know what you're thinking. Of course it was unpopular. Times have not changed. No one cared that the peasants didn't like it. They abolished the practice because the samurai class themselves deemed it inconvenient. Because if she's thirsty and sends her peasant to go get her a drink, and I cut him down with my sword just to see if my new toy is sharp, she has to go get her own drink. And she's lazy. I mean, inconvenienced. So the samurai tested their blades and their skills in other ways. After sujigiri was made illegal, they said you can only test the blades on prisoners, so criminals. The bad thing was, if you were a sword maker or a sword tester, shitoke, and you had a government permit, you could walk into any jail in Japan and take anyone out of a jail cell. So if you were in jail because you got picked up overnight for being drunk, walking on your way home, or if you were in there because you just murdered 14 families, didn't matter. The sword tester would walk in and go, I'll take that one, and take them out. So when they decided that was inhumane, they changed the law so you could only practice test cutting on executed criminals, which in typical government stupidity made no sense at all, because up until the 1800s, the way of executing a criminal in Japan was beheading with a sword. So after you killed them with a sword, then you could cut them with a sword, but not before. Eventually, what the samurai settled on was this. This is rice straw. Well, rice being the staple of Japanese agriculture, they use its products for almost everything. And what they discovered is if you take rice straw, gather it into bundles, tie them together with these 18th century rubber bands. I'm lazy too. They used silk cords, but it takes a long time. If you soak the rice straw in water overnight, the water soaks into the fibers so that they swell, they take on weight and density until it takes on the approximate characteristics of Guinevere. And this gave the samurai something to test their skills with, that almost 450 years later, there are still no activist groups complaining that the rights of rice straw are being violated.
Well, that's not entirely true anymore, dear.
Oh, God. All right, fine. In the interest of full disclosure, we performed at a sci-fi convention in Roanoke, Virginia a few years ago. And I said that, and a group of college students put together a protest group on Facebook. Advocates for the rights of rice straw. And there was a picture of some 400-pound sumo in that diaper cutting through what looks like a bale of hay, and it was an online petition to ban me from cutting rice straw at my performances, and they wouldn't take it down. So not to be outdone, I was the first one in the comment section, and I wrote, "This is what a degree from Virginia Tech will get you." No, it wasn't fun. Does anybody remember this horrific thing that happened to Virginia Tech about 12 years ago? Some kid went nuts and killed 12 people with an AR-15. That's not what I was referencing. All I meant was if you go to school and spend your money at Virginia Tech, all your degree is good for is putting up bogus Facebook groups. The university did not see it that way, and they made me write an apology letter for being insensitive. I'm like, of course I'm insensitive. I'm a man, and I'm not a Virginia Tech student. I told that story in North Carolina last year when we first started having cons again, and 3 guys in the front row just started giggling in a very unmanly fashion. I'm like, what's wrong with you? Have some maturity. And then one guy goes, that was us, dude! And I'm like, it was what? And they're like, you know the funny thing? I'm like, no, what's funny about this? And he goes, we're not from Virginia Tech. They were from Liberty University, which used to be a Baptist Bible college, and so they're the ones that put up that Facebook group. So you can scratch Liberty off of my places to send my kids. So this is what the samurai settled on. Rice straw takes on the approximate characteristics of human muscle tissue. As the samurai cut, and I've been making a lot of really bad jokes and showing you very little martial training and skill in our show so far today, so I want you to watch the test cutting portion of this. The question is not whether the razor-sharp folded steel differentially heat-treated sword blade is going to go through 4.5 inches of weeds. Duh. A $10 machete from Walmart will do that if it's ground properly. It's what it was made for. For the samurai, as they trained, they were looking for different attributes and skills that would aid them on the battlefield. Not simply, will the sword go through the weeds? They were looking for blade angle, among other things, because when you watch reruns of Conan the Barbarian on Cinemax late at night, or am I the only one that still does that? Those big sloppy cuts you see, the figure 8 cuts that Arnold's doing on top of the rocks when he first finds his sword, those flat angles like that didn't work very well on the battlefield because of our human anatomy and frankly the way armor was constructed. If you cut that flat would deflect, it would injure but not necessarily end your opponent. So the samurai are looking for a little bit steeper cut, about a 35-degree angle down. And now that I've told off on myself, watch the cutting. If you think my angle is off, by all means, come tell me about it after the show. I love criticism. I know, there's always that 12-year-old kid that's going to come up afterwards and go, I think your angle was more like 38, and his mom's always standing behind him looking so proud that Johnny is engaging. It's like, yeah, you're criticizing a 6'7" man you don't know wearing a mask with a sword. Well, I know your parents might encourage that, but see me after class. Downward diagonal. Hey! One of you, your arm. Shika! I've been rejected. Guys at college all over again. Well, fine then. Does anybody else want a piece of gum?